Welcome to my channel people. Author link will be on description. After talking for a while, we decided to visit the nearest village or town and spend the rest of the day there before we continue with our journey. As for the matter regarding Sora becoming a pseudo-Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails and Fudo who attacked them out of nowhere, I noticed Kakashi writing something on a scroll before he summoned a miniature pug which was his famous summon Pakun and instructed him to take it back to Konoha. After Kakashi finished reporting this incident, I approached him and said, "You seem to want to follow us, huh?" Kakashi nodded at me and said, "Indeed, you should know that Naruto can't be left unprotected, right? Ho already thought of a reason to explain your unwanted presence, huh? But you won't be getting your way easily. You can join us, but you should remove that mask of yours and accompany us directly. After all, having an Anbu with us would draw many eyes to us," I said, and for some reason, Shisui actually approached us and said, "That's true Kakashi-san, you don't need to hide anyways now that we know you are following us." I shot Shisui a suspicious look as I thought, why's this kid agreeing with me? Is he concocting something behind my back? But Shisui simply smiled without saying anything and waited for Kakashi's response, who ended up letting out a sigh and said, "Fine, I will make sure nothing wrong happens," thought Kakashi. Then, he slowly took out his kitsune mask and retrieved a Konoha headband from his bag, and wore it to cover his Sharingan. He noticed that I was staring at his eye with clear intrigue, so he asked me, "What's wrong?" But he was surprised when I simply smiled at him mysteriously and said, "You have a very unique eye," before I turned around and went back to Naruto and Sasuke, who were watching the unconscious Sora curiously while thinking about how great it would be to have an ability like Kamui. Kakashi for some reason felt like all his secrets were exposed when he saw that smile of mine, so he couldn't help but let out a whisper, "What a weird kid." To his surprise, Shisui experienced something similar to this with Bakurio in the past when he hinted at his Mangekyo Sharingan, and even though he didn't understand why Bakurio said this about Kakashi's eye, he still had a complicated expression on his face as he replied with a whisper of his own, "I agree." Before leaving this area, we first helped Ryokai dig out his carriage to retrieve his valuables. Well, I say we, but it was mainly thanks to Kakashi who did everything, as he was the only one who could use Earth Release in our ever-growing group. After we were done, Ryokai, who knew this area very well, informed us that there is a small town nearby called Golden Tree Town. This town gained this famous name because it had special trees that, in the fall season, instead of their leaves turning yellow or red, they instead turned to a gold color, making it one of the biggest attraction sites of the Land of Fire. Ryokai was very familiar with this town as he would pass by it many times when he's traveling between Konoha and the Land of Tea while selling his merchandise. Ryokai's a merchant who values quality over quantity. That's why although the merchandise he transports is small in size, it only contains the rarest of herbs for medical or consuming purposes. Some clans in particular use his services, like the Nara clan and Akamichi clans, who are very knowledgeable about medicinal herbs, which is how the Akamichi clan's pills which they use to power their secret jutsu come from. Meanwhile, the weather didn't get any better and was still heavily raining even after we reached this town, so we didn't find many pedestrians roaming on the streets. But we noticed that this town had many nice views and souvenir shops. Clearly their main income is from the tourists that comes in the fall. Ryokai took us directly to an inn he was familiar with, and the inn owner greeted him warmly. And once the rest of us went inside, the kids finally relaxed as Naruto immediately looked at me and said, "I'm hungry." The moment he finished saying this, Sasuke reprimanded him as he said, "Can't you think of anything other than your stove?" But we suddenly heard a strong growling sound coming from his stomach, making him turn bashful as we all started laughing and slightly forgetting the events of this gloomy day. Sasuke turned around and hugged his brother to hide his shame, and Itachi simply patted his head with a helpless face and said, "Oh, I'm also hungry." "What about you, Shisui?" Shisui shot an envious look at these two brothers and how close they seemed before he smiled and said, "I'm starving." "I will take care of it, it will be my treat," said Ryokai with a warm smile on his big fat face. And so, we sat down on one of the tables of the inn and waited for our food while the kids kept arguing. I noticed that none of the other tables were occupied, so I asked Ryokai about it. "Oh, this wouldn't be the case if we were in the fall season, you know this town is famous for He started telling us about the attractions this town has to offer, and Naruto was immediately excited and kept begging me to visit this place again in the fall to see these famous golden trees, which I reluctantly agreed to. After a while, and while everyone was waiting for the food they ordered, I said, "I'm going to the bathroom." However, to my surprise, Shisui immediately said after me with an apologetic look on his face, "I also need to go. Let's go together, Bakurio-kun." I shot him a weird look and said, "That's the creepiest thing I ever heard. Kakashi, you are an Anbu. How can you let him say such a thing to a kid in public?" Kakashi simply turned his head away and ignored me while the rest simply laughed except Naruto and Sasuke, who didn't even understand what I was implying. Motherfuck. I wanted to curse, but I changed my mind and simply stood up and asked the inn owner for the location of the bathroom. Shisui simply followed after me with a slight frown on his face that didn't escape Itachi's notice and felt that he was acting weirdly. What's Shisui trying to do? He was about to stand up and follow after them, but he decided to trust in his friend's judgment. After asking the inn owner for direction, Bakurio understood that the bathroom was a separate unit attached to the inn and you need to go outside to access it, and inside it had multiple stalls. Shisui kept observing me, and since we were inside alone, I turned to look at him with a cold look in my eyes lacking any of my previous childishness and said, "What are you doing?" Shisui was at first surprised by my sudden change in behavior as he thought, "Is this his true self?" But he then smiled and said, "Can't I go to the bathroom?" We kept looking at each other's eyes for a while before I let out a sigh. "You are really annoying, you know." Shisui chuckled a little and said, "You are the first person to consider me annoying. How narcissistic can one idiot be?" I thought before I said, "Just say what do you want. Don't keep playing these stupid games. I know you've been observing me for quite a while now." Shisui's smile finally disappeared from his face seeing me addressing the issue directly, so he also decided to stop pretending and said, "I want to ask you a few questions, and I will do anything to get the real answers. After all, I can't turn a blind eye to what happened to Itachi." To my surprise, the always gentle and harmless Shisui that always has a sunny smile on his face suddenly turned extremely cold as his eyes turned into blood red, but they didn't have the expected 3 tomo but a 4-point wheel shape. He was directly showing his Mangekyo Sharingan, dropping all pretense. This kid is getting on my nerves, I thought as my murderous intent started gushing out. Meanwhile, as my confrontation with Shisui was happening, a similar scene was happening in Konoha as 2 elders, Homura and Kaharu, who were drinking tea over a table and discussing the humiliation they received by getting kicked out of their privileged position, were visited by the current Hokage of Konoha, Fugaku. "What the hell do you think you are doing here, Fugaku? You are not welcome here. Scram. Don't waste our time, HMPH. Yelled Kaharu, showing no respect to the Hokage when she saw Fugaku walking nonchalantly towards the both of them, while Homura simply kept glaring at him waiting to see his response. But they never expected his response to be so simple as he said, "Don't worry, I don't want to waste my time either," before his eyes suddenly started transforming into 3 dots followed by 3 curves spiraling counterclockwise around the pupil, and he calmly made eye contact with the 2 of them. Huh. This kid actually dares to threaten me with his Mangekyo Sharingan. My killing intent couldn't help but start gushing out, especially since I knew what a huge risk his ability Koto Amatsukami could pose to me and anyone else for that matter who looks into his eyes. Seeing the murderous intent slowly gushing out of my body, Shisui understood that he was playing a dangerous game here, but he still decided to ignore it and coldly questioned me, "When did you find out that Kakashi-san was following us secretly? This kid is really getting on my nerves. Should I kill him?" This thought suddenly surfaced on my head, and for some reason, it made a shiver run down Shisui's spine as he almost felt a hand caressing his neck ready to crush it to his horror, but he suddenly woke up and found it was all an illusion and my murderous aura has disappeared. Consider yourself lucky, it's just too bad to lose your talent. I thought before I shrugged my shoulders and said, "I will answer you when you ask politely," and then I did something that surprised him. I suddenly jumped to the window and left this building, and Shisui immediately yelled, "Wait," as he started chasing after me. After a few seconds of chasing me, he noticed that I suddenly stopped making any sound and seemed to be hiding my presence from something as I approached a certain building with my Sharingan active, so he decided to mimic my actions. "What's he doing?" thought Shisui, who deactivated his Mangekyo Sharingan, and a puzzled expression adorned his face as he too started moving stealthily. Before long, I arrived at the foot of a tall building while hiding in its shadow, and a second later, Shisui landed beside me and shot me an inquisitive look, trying to get an explanation for what was going on. But I simply put my index finger on my lips to indicate to him to keep his stupid mouth shut, and for the first time, he actually decided to put some trust in me and didn't say anything. To Shisui's surprise, I started walking vertically on the wall of this 5-story building, which was one of the tallest buildings in this town, while still not making any sound. This kid moves like an experienced assassin. Shisui didn't know what to say as he saw a kid have this level of mastery in both his chakra control and body movement. When we were about to reach the top, Shisui finally noticed with his Sharingan a strong chakra signature hiding on one of the corners of the building. What's going on? Is this the friend he wants to meet? However, this thought was soon proven wrong as Shisui saw me suddenly disappearing in the shadows, and an instant later a scream was heard from the top of the building, so he quickly rushed up to see what was going on. Once on the roof of this building, Shisui was greeted with a weird scene of a severed leg falling to the ground and two people facing off against each other. One was the kid he was following, but now he was holding a kunai in his right hand and a nostalgic look in his eyes as his face and kunai were splashed with some drops of blood, which Shisui assumed were from the other guy's leg that was just severed. And in front of him was a muscular man with long white hair and a long scar on his face, which was twisted from the pain of losing his leg to the kid's sneak attack, and he was using a multi-section monk staff to stabilize himself. "Bakurio, what are you doing?" said Shisui, whose first reaction was to check if this was an enemy or not. Without averting my eyes from this dangerous man, I said, "This is the guy behind what happened to the kid we just found." Hearing what I said, Shisui's eyes immediately turned serious as he prepared himself for a fight. "Who are you, kid? And how did you escape my detection?" asked Kazuma with a perplexed look on his pained face while using some healing jutsu on his severed leg to stop the bleeding. "You think I would approach someone without assuming that they could be a censor? Hehehe, that would be too naive of me. Just like how you naively think that you could stop the bleeding." My face had a wicked smile plastered on it as I looked at the injured Kazuma, whose expression suddenly twisted when he noticed that his healing jutsu wasn't as effective as it was supposed to be. "Yo, you actually poisoned me?" asked Kazuma in astonishment, knowing that escaping this predicament suddenly became 10 times harder facing this kind of sneaky opponent whose first attack served to cripple his movement. "Well, sorry. I didn't have a stronger poison, otherwise, we could have made this fight even shorter. I was really regretful as the best poison I had was the one in my lethal kunai, which I used to sever his leg. As for why I could take a skilled censor like him by surprise. The moment I merged with the shadows, I activated my Mangekyo Sharingan and used my Yomi no Kuni to completely wipe out my presence, and before Kazuma could locate me, I appeared under him and the rest was obvious." "You!" Kazuma suddenly yelled and held his monk staff above his head and started strongly twisting it, which in turn started creating a tornado around him. Shisui, seeing this, was about to take action. "Not good. This building is going to be destroyed if this continues, and the people inside it will be crushed by it. I need to stop him." However, before he could take action, Shisui noticed from the corner of his eyes that I already made my move as I rushed at Kazuma, who arrogantly said, "Kid, you are just a moth rushing to the flames." But I simply ignored his arrogance, and as a tornado started manifesting itself around him, making him even more confident. Shisui noticed me returning my lethal kunai to my bag and held my right hand up, and through his Sharingan, he could see chakra started accumulating on top of my hand in the shape of an orb. "What's this?" Shisui's eyes widened in surprise at the high level of chakra manipulation required for such a jutsu that even his Sharingan almost couldn't understand. Meanwhile, as I was creating the Rasengan, I was also tempted to yell, "Rasengan!" But I wasn't a Naruto, so I simply analyzed Kazuma's location and sent the Rasengan on where his abdomen was supposed to be, easily penetrating the still forming tornado, which was the result of him using the wind release twister jutsu. A blue chakra explosion radiated when we made contact, and Kazuma ended up sent flying through the air as he murmured, "Impossible. How can I be defeated by a kid? Ag." As he finished his lamenting, he also threw up blood and lost consciousness while midair as he started falling from this high building, but I quickly caught him by using chakra strings before I pulled him up. "Amazing. What was that jutsu you used?" Asked Shisui curiously. I glanced at him briefly before I turned my attention to Kazuma and started restraining him and putting some seals on him that restrain his chakra before I responded. It's called Rasengan. This jutsu is probably the highest form of pure chakra manipulation. Shisui was surprised and nodded in agreement. After all, he just witnessed its power that could match even Kakashi's Chidori, and he knew that even if he used the power of his Sharingan's Eye of Insight to its full power, it won't be easy to copy this jutsu and might be even impossible. After all, this was the masterpiece created by the fourth Hokage. Back at Konoha, at the same time Bakurio was done with Kazuma. Two of Konoha's ex-elders completely lost their free will as they were both trapped inside Fugaku's genjutsu. And their two guards suddenly barged in the room, but they were simply greeted with Kaharu still yelling at Fugaku while Homura interjected from time to time, and after a long argument between the two parties, Fugaku finally left, taking with him the freedom of these two while their guards didn't have any idea that it happened. Now this hidden threat is dealt with, I should focus on those spies, thought Fugaku before he calmly walked back to his office unaware that his eldest son had just awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan. Seeing the amazement on Shisui's face, I couldn't help but think about how incredible and versatile the Rasengan is. Normally a jutsu would only reach rank A when you add to it a chakra nature which would greatly raise its strength, but the Rasengan reached this rank with only pure chakra manipulation, and it reached a level of power that even rivals something like the Chidori. This is without mentioning its other forms like the giant Rasengan or the double-handed Rasengan and whatnot. The Chidori, which is the personal jutsu created by Kakashi, was invented after he failed to incorporate his lightning chakra nature into the Rasengan, but success was still achieved from this failure and he ended up creating the Chidori instead. This goes to show that not any person can add chakra nature to such a high-level jutsu. Kakashi didn't succeed, and his teacher Minato, the creator of the Rasengan, also didn't succeed before he died. So, what happens when chakra nature is added to the Rasengan? Well, Naruto added the wind nature and created the wind release, Rasenshuriken. A jutsu so broken that it could one-shot almost anyone hit by it if they aren't fast enough to dodge it or have a Rinnegan to absorb it. But Naruto's success in incorporating wind nature chakra into the Rasengan was nothing more than pure cheating instead of a feat of genius, because in canon before he did this, Kakashi revealed to him the secret of the shadow clone jutsu and how the clones can share their experience with their original. So taking advantage of his unique situation, Naruto summoned countless clones thanks to the help of the huge chakra reserves he has from being Kurama's Jinchuriki, and started doing mass training which sped up his training speed by countless times. Normal people can also create many shadow clones, but they won't have enough chakra left to cast jutsu through them, but Naruto was different, that's why he was able to create the Rasenshuriken in the end. While I was contemplating the versatility of the Rasengan, Shisui suddenly seemed to have thought of something and said in an angry voice, "So you were pretending from the start, you did all of that on purpose, didn't you?" I understood that he was referring to the Fisher incident, so I simply shrugged and said, "Yes, so what?" Shisui's face turned livid in anger as he yelled, "What if something went wrong? You risked losing the lives of your friends. And for what? What if Kakashi didn't rescue you in time as you planned?" I looked in annoyance at this guy and raised one finger to his face. "First of all, stop yelling, I can hear you clearly, tch. Then my face turned serious and raised a second finger. Secondly, I didn't risk the lives of my friends and had plenty of other ways to save them if Kakashi didn't arrive in time as I planned." And then I raised a third finger with a smirk that annoyed Shisui even more. Third and most important of all, I wanted Sasuke to awaken his Sharingan and for Naruto to understand the importance of strength if he wants to protect the people he cares about. After all, this world is very cruel. My smirk couldn't help but turn into a melancholic face when I remembered my time in the war, which surprised Shisui and made his anger subside a little, and I quickly followed by saying, "Not to mention, would you rather Itachi end up awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan while experiencing a real loss?" Shisui's face was hesitant. After all, he understood all these points I was making, but he just selfishly wanted a better way to achieve these results without traumatizing everyone like that. Shisui raised his eyes when he heard me call his name and was surprised when I said to him, "Just think about it this way, if I did this to you, would you be mad? And do you actually think that you are the only one smart enough to realize all of this?" Shisui's eyes widened in surprise as he said, "You mean?" "Yes, both Itachi and Kakashi have their doubts." Kakashi even went further and mentioned that I might have unknown intention in the report he sent about the incident. At this point, Shisui couldn't help but grow fearful at the level of planning that was going on behind the scenes. When did he check out Kakashi's report? And just how many steps ahead did he think before even acting? "Oh Shisui, you are 5 steps away from realizing that I'm 10 steps ahead all the time, ha 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 ha." I couldn't help but let out a laugh as I finished tying up the unconscious Kazuma before I simply jumped away from the building and left back to the inn. "Wait, what about?" Sigh. He left me with the heavy work. With a helpless face, Shisui picked up Kazuma and started going back to the inn. When we arrived, we found the food was already served and they were just waiting for us to come back from the bathroom. Naruto was the first to complain with a pout on his face, "What took you so long?" While Itachi asked with a perplexed face when he saw me return alone, "Where's Shisui?" I patted Naruto's head as I sat between him and Sasuke and said, Sorry, before I turned to Itachi and said with a mischievous smile, "He's doing some workout and will be here soon." Right after I finished saying this, Shisui walked inside the inn holding a large man on his back with a helpless expression on his face, surprising everyone. Then, when asked about the man's identity, he started explaining what happened after we left the inn, which made Kakashi immediately check if the binding on this guy were tight enough, and he was surprised when he found out that he was tied with no way to escape and even had some seals that restrained chakra carved on him. Shisui said Bakurio did all this. Just how much is he hiding? Thought Kakashi while shooting a wary look at the boy enjoying his food. Without any regard to the world around him. A team will be coming soon from Konoha to retrieve the kid. Once they arrive, we will send this guy with them too, said Kakashi, surprising everyone that someone will come to take the unconscious Sora back to Konoha, especially those who didn't know that he had some of the 9 tails chakra sealed in him. I shot him a look before I turned my attention to the food and enjoyed the amazing delicacies this town had to offer. The thing I liked the most was a dessert that was made with wild honey extracted from bees that build their nest on the golden trees. It looked like a sponge cake and was glazed with gold-colored honey and it tasted amazing. I couldn't get enough of it and I made sure to order this honey in the future for when I reopen my shops. And just like that, our time in the inn passed peacefully as we each returned to our rooms. We ordered 4 rooms and separated into 4 groups. Kakashi was staying with Sora, Ryokai with his guard Hotaru, Shisui with Itachi and they were guarding Kazuma, and me with Naruto and Sasuke. 1h later, I was peacefully laying on my bed while looking at Sasuke, who was excitedly using his Sharingan and toying with Naruto until I finally sensed some people approaching our location at a fast speed. So they are finally here, huh? I wonder who was sent by Konoha. While everyone was staying in their own room as it was still heavily raining outside, a group of 3 people wearing Konoha's standard ninja outfit entered the inn and they consisted of 2 males and 1 female. Surprisingly, they were people I knew from the anime and encountered a little in the war, but I never had a proper meeting with them and got to know them. Not that I am interested in meeting them in the first place, except for a certain weird-looking member of their group, since he will turn out to be a true legendary character of this world and widely renowned as the greatest taijutsu user. The trio from Konoha were Asuma, Guy, and Kurenai, and they were able to follow our trail to this inn thanks to Kakashi's dog Summon, who came back with them after delivering the message. Kakashi's summon was always a mystery to me when I watched the anime, since they were never explained why he could actually summon dogs that could talk. Meanwhile, the Inuzuka clan that specializes in raising dogs didn't have such talking dogs. So, I did some investigation and found out that it was something unique to the Hitaki clan. This clan had a lot of history and unique skills, from their strong kenjutsu which made Kakashi's father famous to their weirdly talented bloodline that could produce ninja like Kakashi's father, the White-Fanged Tsukumo, and Kakashi himself. But other than being ninja, their main interest was farming, and one day, one of the Hitaki ancestors ended up meeting a talking dog and forming a contract with him. As for the origin of that dog, it was kept as top secret even among the Hitaki clan members, but they kept making contacts with these dogs and using them to protect their farms for generation. After the trio entered the inn, they immediately approached the counter to ask for Kakashi's whereabouts, and the inn owner immediately noticed their Konoha headbands, so he greeted them politely and was ready to help them out. After all, in the land of fire, the daimyo might be the one ruling the country, but Konoha was the one protecting it from the invasion of other hidden villages, not to mention that you wouldn't want to offend a Jonin-level ninja in general. How can I help you? Said the inn owner, and he couldn't help but feel weirded out by a certain member of this group whose eyes were twinkling in excitement. He was a tall, well-muscled young man with fair skin and a strong jawline, a somewhat large nose, and black hair. His most distinctive feature was his shiny bowl-style haircut and his thick eyebrows. He was wearing a tight green jumpsuit, orange striped leg warmers, and the standard Konoha flak jacket. This is of course none other than Guy, who was looking around excitedly while yelling, "Kakashi, my lifelong rival, show yourself and let our youth shine with the light of our passion." Asuma, noticing the owner was weirded out and knowing that both Guy's behavior and his appearance deserved this kind of reaction, shot him an apologetic look as he rubbed the back of his head and said, "Please don't mind our friend here, he's just excited about meeting his friend. Anyways, can you please tell me in what room a white-haired man with his headband covering one of his eyes is staying? He probably already informed you of our arrival." The owner, understanding that they were ninja from the same village as the previous group and probably had some business with each other, gave them Kakashi's room number without much hesitation, since he couldn't stop them either way if they wanted to forcefully search for Kakashi, and Asuma didn't waste time as he thanked the owner and directed Guy and Kurenai to Kakashi's room. Asuma was about to knock on the door, but Kakashi's cold voice immediately said from the inside, "Come in," and before Asuma could reply, Guy immediately barged in, rushing to hug Kakashi, that was recently distancing himself from others after tragedies that he kept encountering in life, but Kakashi didn't share his enthusiasm and Guy was immediately met with a kunai on his throat as Kakashi looked at him coldly. "What are you doing here?" Guy started sweating hard as he gulped down in nervousness and said, Kakashi, stop. We were sent here after the Hokage received your report." Kakashi retrieved his kunai at this point and looked at Asuma for confirmation and said, "Is this true?" Asuma nodded at him and said with a frown, clearly displeased at Kakashi's earlier behavior, "Yes, it's true." Kakashi didn't offer Guy any apologies as he coldly looked at Kurenai, who was skilled in genjutsu, and said, "Check why the kid's not waking up, and you two follow me. I need your help to confirm something." Then, Kakashi walked past them without waiting for their response in the direction of Shisui's and Itachi's room where Kazuma's held captive. "This guy gets on my nerves every time I see him. Who does he think he is, bossing us around like this?" said Kurenai in displeasure, clear in her voice and face. Guy, seeing that his rival was getting on everyone's nerves again with his distant attitude, tried to help out at this point and said, "Anyways, this kid has nothing to do with it, so you should really check his condition. And I'm sure there's a reason on why he wants us to come with him." Asuma let out a sigh and said to Guy, "You really deserve a better rival," while Kurenai simply snorted, HMPH, and went to check on Sora, who was still unconscious until now. Guy started shining with his aura of youth again and said, "No, Kakashi and I were destined to be rivals." Asuma helplessly looked at him before he turned around and started following Kakashi, and Guy did the same with a hard-to-discern sadness on his face. Inside the room, they found Shisui and Itachi talking with Kakashi about the people that were sent by Konoha, and when Asuma entered, he couldn't help but feel his eyes drawn to the white-haired man tied and left laying on the floor of the room. At first, he simply found him familiar, but then he took a good look at all his features and couldn't help it as his mouth opened wide in shock as he confirmed the scar on the guy's face and confirmed that it matched something from his past and ended up exclaiming, "Impossible." Kakashi, noticing this, asked him with a frown, "What's wrong?" Everyone was intrigued with his reaction and Asuma quickly explained to them why he was shocked. "I'm sure this is Kazuma, a former member of the 12 Guardian Ninja that rebelled against the daimyo and attempted to take his life, but I'm sure I killed him with my own hands. How did he end up here and involved in all this mess?" Kakashi seemed to have confirmed something as he said, "So, that's why I kept finding him familiar, huh?" At this point, Itachi and Shisui shot each other a look of amazement as they thought of the same thing. This notorious guy was actually taken down by Bakurio on his own. However, at this point, Kazuma started to slowly open his eyes as he coughed up some blood and looked at everyone in the room before his eyes landed on Asuma and slightly widened as he said, "Who would have thought I would meet you again in this condition, Asuma?" Asuma finally couldn't help it as he asked, "You actually survived, Kazuma? How?" Kazuma started checking his condition and found out that he was both tied and sealed. "You guys did a good job tying me up. Asuma didn't like getting ignored, so he asked again in anger, "Answer my question." Ha ha ha, cough cough. Kazuma started laughing until he coughed blood again and said with a smile, "Is this how you greet your former comrade after we haven't met for 3 years?" Kakashi intervened at this point and asked directly, "Where did you get all that Ninetales chakra from?" Oh, is Kakashi maybe suspicious of me? I couldn't help but smile when I heard the question Kakashi asked. After all, the first thought that would come to mind when you find someone using the chakra of the Nine Tails is that it was taken from its Jinchuriki, whether using force or not. And since the Jinchuriki is just a kid and can't use the power of his tailed beast at all, the next person in line to be suspected of trying to extract the chakra of the Nine Tails from him would most likely be the closest person to him. And in this case it was me, as Naruto was even living with me at this point. And the only thing stopping Kakashi from acting on this suspicion is the fact that I was actually the one that found out about the sealing that was happening and even captured Kazuma that was tailing us secretly in the end. But Kazuma's response surprised him. "You are Kakashi of the Sharingan, huh? Why do you think I would tell you any?" However, before he could finish, Kakashi chopped his neck, rendering him unconscious again before he said to Asuma coldly, "Take him to the interrogation unit and have someone explore his memories. We will know the truth then." And then he simply turned around and was about to leave the room. Seeing Kakashi about to leave, Guy immediately said, "Aren't you going back with us to the village?" Kakashi looked at him and said, "No, I'm staying here for now," before he left. Asuma shrugged at this and turned to Shisui and Itachi and said, "You guys did a great job. I will make sure to report your contribution to the Hokage and the village elders." Shisui had a helpless look when he heard this, which brought a smile to Itachi's face before he said, "It was Bakurio-kun who found out that we were being followed and captured this guy all on his own. He was also the one that heard the kid screaming despite the heavy rain and led us there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have found such a remote cave." Ha! Another wave of astonishment washed over Asuma, this time even stronger than when he found out that Kazuma was still alive. The disbelief on Asuma's face didn't disappear even as they were escorting Kazuma and Sora back to Konoha, prompting Kurenai to ask him, "Are you still thinking about that Uchiha kid?" Asuma was suddenly broken from his thought as he nodded to her. "Ah, I just can't believe a kid can be this strong, and he even can use the fourth Hokage's famous jutsu." Asuma simply didn't want to accept that someone such as Kazuma, who required great effort to defeat him, was actually defeated by a small Uchiha kid. Kurenai simply shrugged her shoulders and said, "Maybe someone taught it to him. Is this why you are still thinking about it?" Asuma nodded his head before he simply let out a sigh and said, "I just can't imagine how he will turn out when he grows up, and the circumstances around this kid are just too weird. Hopefully, the elders and the Hokage know what they are doing." This last sentence silenced Kurenai and brought a thoughtful expression on her face. Meanwhile, Guy's eyes simply started shining with his power of youth at the thought of having a stronger rival that was much more talented than even Kakashi. Back at the inn, the night passed peacefully as the hidden danger was dealt with. As for Mukai, I actually called him to come to meet us here at Golden Tree Town, but he decided he would rather not when he found out that there were many people, and he wouldn't be able to sleep at ease, especially with Kakashi around. After all, no one likes to get impaled with a Chidori when he lets his guard down for an instant. TCH, my relaxing journey was ruined by these idiots. After this is over, I won't involve myself with any more trouble. I let out a sigh before I looked at the kids who already fell asleep before I too dozed off, but not before summoning a shadow clone to keep guard. Early in the morning we all got up and had a delicious breakfast at the inn before we resumed our delayed journey. Ryokai actually had some connections in this town and he got us a new carriage to travel on, so we didn't have to resume our travel on foot all the way to the land of tea. Good thing was that the weather today was sunny, so we enjoyed our trip to the border of the land of tea even though the roads were still muddy from the rain, so that delayed us a little, but overall it was better than getting swallowed by a fissure out of nowhere and having to wipe Konoha's ass again and again. When we started getting closer to the land of tea, a huge body of water started appearing in our view. Its water was crystal clear and it was surrounded by a lot of vegetation. That's why we didn't see it until we got close enough to it. This was the Southern Lake, the meeting point I made with Mukai. At this point, Ryokai, that was being made fun of by Naruto and Sasuke, turned to me and asked with a smile, "Bakurio-kun, should we stop and wait for your friend here?" The last thing I want is for that bastard Mukai to be my friend. My eyes couldn't help but twitch a little before I looked out of the window and saw the beautiful scenery of the lake and said, "Yes, here is fine. He should be waiting somewhere near the lake." "Okay," replied Ryokai before he ordered Hotaru, who was enjoying his talk with Itachi and Shisui, to stop the carriage. Then Ryokai noticed the kids looking out of the window at Lake Southern with their eyes twinkling, so he said, "How about we eat our lunch at the shore of Lake Southern?" Naruto and Sasuke immediately turned to look at me with an excited expression on their little faces, and thinking that this was a good opportunity for me to relax too, I nodded and said, "That's a good idea," and that's how we ended eating our lunch while enjoying the breathtaking sceneries Southern Lake had to offer. And to be honest, I didn't mind this kind of relaxation. Anything is better than seeing a lake of blood and corpses. But as my luck would have it, it was quickly broken when the paranoid Kakashi detected someone trying to approach us stealthily using the vegetation of this area as his cover, and immediately shot a kunai in his direction while yelling, "Who's there?" The bushes started rustling and out of them emerged the ever-annoying Mukai with a smirk on his face while holding the kunai Kakashi threw between his fingers and started speaking. "Anbu Captain Kakashi Hatake, you never change, do you? Is this how you greet your old comrade?" Itachi and Shisui suddenly sprung up to their feet as they looked warily between Mukai and me, who's still ignoring everything and enjoying the food. Meanwhile, Naruto and Sasuke looked curiously at how everyone seemed so tense after this man approached us. Sasuke especially was surprised at seeing his brother so nervous, which was something he never saw before. If only he witnessed the ass-whooping Itachi and Shisui received from Mukai. Ah, what a treat to the eye that was. Kakashi's looked coldly at Mukai as he unveiled his Sharingan and said, "Who would have thought we would meet again under these circumstances after you betrayed Konoha to work for Kiri?" Mukai simply shrugged his shoulders as he took a sip from the jug that was strapped to his waist and said, "Well, life is strange." Kakashi was surprised at how casual the usually careful Mukai was acting, not even activating his Byakugan, so he started monitoring their surroundings warily in case he had any helpers and said, "So what are you doing here?" Mukai looked around until he located me and was amused when he saw that I was ignoring what was going on and simply enjoying the food while everyone was on guard before he pointed at me and said, "Hey brat, you are late, ha. Don't tell me, the friend he wanted to meet is this dangerous traitor." Itachi, Shisui, and Kakashi couldn't help but shoot me a weird look, which turned much more weirder when they found out that I almost finished all the food while they were distracted by Mukai. Naruto couldn't hold his anger as he yelled, "Triple A Bakurio, how could you eat everything?" Sasuke noticed that I was about to pick the last grilled fish, so he quickly snatched it away from me and ran away while giggling like an idiot. "Hey Sasuke, it's rude to steal food like this," I yelled, but everyone couldn't help but have dark lines on their faces as Hotaru said, "And you find it fine to eat everything on your own and leave us nothing? Where did all that food go in the first place?" It was really a miracle how someone this small could eat that much. I ignored Hotaru and turned to look at Mukai, who I sensed way before we arrived at Lake Southern, as he kept tailing us for a while before he showed himself, and now he was pretending like he was simply waiting for us all along. "Yo Mukai, come join us for lunch." Mukai chuckled a little as he started approaching us, which made everyone's nerves tighter, and said, "Sorry. I'm not a fan of bones, plus why did you bring all these people for our business?" What business could he have with Mukai? Is it related to the Nine Tails? This is bad. I don't think I can take Mukai on my own and protect the kids, and he also might have other helpers lurking around, including that kid Bakurio. What should I do? I noticed Kakashi was about to attack at any moment, so I said, "Kakashi, relax, he's not a traitor anymore," before I turned to the amused Mukai and said, "I only wanted to take the kids for a fun journey and relax a little. The rest are simply tagging along without even being invited." Kakashi and the rest couldn't help but want to beat me up when I made this comment, but it lightened the tense mood a little, especially when Mukai ignored them and looked at the almost finished food. "The view here is indeed great, suitable for a relaxing meal. Wait, I will get us something to eat." I smiled at the great acting of this guy and simply said, "Oh, how generous of you." And as Mukai started approaching the lake, I yelled at the two kids who were fighting for the last grilled fish that Sasuke stole from me, "Hey Naruto, Sasuke." With their faces full of food, they both turned to look at me curiously and said, "What munch you munch want?" Watch Mukai closely. Naruto and Sasuke tilted their heads and looked at what Mukai was going to do, a scene that would ignite their desire to become ninja even more just so they can be cool. I tried to act casually with Mukai to make this group of tense idiots relax a little, but I forgot that they weren't relaxed around me in the first place, not to mention seeing me act friendly with a potential enemy, so I simply made the situation worse as they all started watching nervously what Mukai's trying to do by approaching the lake. Then, to Naruto's and Sasuke's surprise, Mukai started walking on the water of the lake and observing it before suddenly, he kicked with the bottom of his foot creating a small ripple. Then 3 large fish were dragged from it and held in the air with invisible strings, and he kept repeating this motion until he collected enough food for everyone present and started heading back toward us with a smug look on his face. Naruto's and Sasuke's faces were filled with amazement at this cool showcase, however surprisingly it wasn't just them, as the more experienced people in this group understood just how terrifying are the capabilities of this man from this seemingly peaceful scene. What a show-off! I muttered in annoyance while looking at the smug look on Mukai's face that seemed to be carved in his bones. Kakashi's mind however was filled with shock. How can he be so skilled with the Hyuga's gentle fist when he's not even a member of their clan? What a monster, to actually have such a strong mastery to use it with his legs and take out a group of moving fish with such great control, almost without creating any disturbance and even sparing some attention to manipulate chakra strings with his hands to hold his catcher fish in place. This traitor can't be allowed to live any longer. Realizing how hugely he underestimated Mukai, Kakashi's eyes started turning colder as he signaled to Itachi and Shisui to be ready for a fight at any moment. Shisui and Itachi already understood how dangerous Mukai was. After all, they already fought and lost convincingly to the point that Shisui was almost forced to use his Mangekyo Sharingan if I didn't interfere at the last second, so they reluctantly nodded at Kakashi and waited for their opportunity. "Wah, Mukai-san, that was so cool. Can you teach me how to do it?" said Naruto as he innocently approached Mukai with twinkling eyes, which made Kakashi and the rest much tenser. Meanwhile, Mukai for the first time since he arrived here had an actual genuine expression on his face, probably because he likes children and their innocence because they reminded him of his kids. Of course, minus a certain kid he knows who didn't have an ounce of innocence. So, he smiled at Naruto warmly and patted his head while saying, "You want to be a ninja?" However, before Naruto could respond, Sasuke, who thought so highly of his brother and Bakurio, didn't want to think that there was someone cooler, so he quickly said, "HMPH, my big brother Itachi and Bakurio are way cooler. Good boy Sasuke, good boy." I couldn't help but nod when I heard Sasuke, although I didn't appreciate that he mentioned me in the same sentence as Itachi. Naruto on the other hand simply ignored Sasuke and said to Mukai, "Yup, I will become the strongest ninja ever, even stronger than Bakurio." Mukai's eyes flickered a little as he shot me a look and found a very smug look plastered on my face to the point that he felt like he was looking in a mirror, which annoyed him, so he replied to Naruto, "Being stronger than Bakurio isn't that hard. How about you try to become stronger than me?" Naruto suddenly tilted his head and with the same innocent look, stabbed a dagger at Mukai's ego as he said, "Why would I? Bakurio's way stronger than you, tch. Ha 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 ha, you hear that, Mukai? Even a kid can tell who's the boss here." I couldn't help but burst out laughing as I saw Mukai's face crumble by what Naruto said, and he almost fell back from impact of this blow. And hearing my laugh made him even more annoyed as he put down the fish he caught and was about to sit beside me, but I suddenly raised my hand and said, "Wait." Mukai looked at me in surprise, but I quickly explained to him with a smile, "These guys didn't get enough of last time's beating, so go have some fun with them first." Mukai's surprised face suddenly disappeared like an illusion as an amused smile replaced it, and he said while looking at the tense trio, "I didn't think you would actually warn me." Itachi couldn't help but yell at me, "What are you doing? Helping an enemy? Are you also trying to betray Konoha?" I looked at this guy that was still too young and inexperienced, being only 11 years old at this point, and decided to forgive him as I said, "Are you stupid, Itachi?" Itachi was about to speak again, but Shisui stopped him and said, "Itachi, stop." Mukai already noticed that we were going to attack him before Bakurio said anything. His warning is directed to us, not to Mukai. I clapped at this smart monkey and said with a serious face, "That's right, see how nice I am, Itachi." Mukai knew the moment he turned his back on you and started walking towards the lake as he secretly used his Byakugan without you noticing and observed you signaling to each other. Anyway, fight if you want but do it away from the kids. Itachi, realizing that I simply didn't want to involve the kids, nodded in embarrassment. However, I wasn't finished and I suddenly looked at both Mukai and Kakashi as an ominous aura started gushing out of me like a broken dam and said, however, no killing or fatal injuries are allowed from both sides. Otherwise, you wouldn't like what might happen to you. Mukai's expression immediately turned dead serious when he sensed the amount of killing intent emanating from me that made the animals in the area start running away as if escaping from a calamity. Just how many people were killed with those small hands? Thought Mukai while looking Bakurio in surprise, and unsurprisingly, similar thoughts were going through the minds of all the people present, but suddenly the killing intent disappeared, making them feel like they were just hallucinating, but they knew they weren't. Kakashi quickly regained his calm and said to Shisui and Itachi, let's go. Before he jumped to the lake and started running on the water until he reached a distance he deemed safe for us and no shockwaves would reach our camp. Itachi and Shisui quickly followed after him, but not before asking me to take care of the kids just in case, and I calmly nodded as a response. Meanwhile, Mukai shot me a weird look before he also turned around and started following them to the lake while calmly sipping on his alcohol. Oi Naruto, Sasuke, who do you think will win? I suddenly asked, bringing the kids out of their confusion of the sudden development of the situation. Naruto, who was still amazed by the recent cool showcase, immediately said, I think Mukai-san will win, but Sasuke immediately rebuked him and said, are you kidding? Big brother will easily beat him up in no time. Well, you will find yourself disappointed, Sasuke. I thought with a smile on my face as I watched the fight that started. -10 minutes later I happily ate the fish Mukai caught as I grilled them on the bonfire while the half Hyuga was fighting the 2.5 Uchiha. And right now, the results of the fight were already settled as Mukai sat beside me with some cuts on his outfits while Kakashi, Shisui, and Itachi had multiple bruises all over their bodies, especially Itachi, who had 2 black eyes like a panda. As I was eating, I couldn't help but look at Itachi and I ended up bursting into laughter again as I crazily slapped my thigh before I turned to Mukai and said, "Ha Mukai. You never seemed more pleasing to the eye." Mukai wanted to puke when he heard these words coming from me as he thought, I hope I never seem like this again. Meanwhile, while Itachi felt like crying as he thought, what did I do to deserve this special attention? Clearly, Mukai made sure to turn him into a panda for some reason, so poor Itachi ended up getting some free makeup. And who's surprised by the result of this fight? After experiencing firsthand how strong Mukai truly was, we finally finished our lunch and decided to go on with our journey to the land of tea. Once we entered this country, we finally said goodbye to Ryokai and Hotaru as their destination was in a different direction than ours, while we continued our journey on foot to Port Dagarashi while enjoying the scenery on our way there, and it didn't take us long to arrive. This port was a famous tourist attraction, so having great sceneries was obvious, so I simply decided to leave the kids with Itachi and Shisui to enjoy themselves while I go find Tsunade with Mukai. But someone clearly didn't want to leave us alone. It was Kakashi who kept insisting on coming with us. Fine, you can come, but don't ruin my business. You will keep your mouth shut during the negotiations, I said to Kakashi coldly, and Mukai too had the same expression as he knew they couldn't mess this up. Okay, nodded Kakashi with a laid-back expression, and we directly started walking in the direction of a casino, which is where Tsunade was drinking and gambling right now. I didn't want to waste too much time looking for her, so I simply sent a shadow clone ahead of time to find her when we entered the land of the tea. Inside the casino, Tsunade was currently causing a mess in her drunk state, not even caring that it was only the afternoon, while her apprentice Shizune tried her best to hold her back to no avail, and before we even entered, we could already hear a woman yelling at the top of her voice, "Bring more drinks," while slamming a gambling table, causing it to crack and the ground under it started vibrating. What the hell is going on? Thought Kakashi with a surprised expression, while Mukai's eyes simply started shining in hope of meeting this legendary ninja and the possibility of healing his kid. Once inside, we noticed that the casino manager was trying to reason with the drunk Tsunade to the best of his abilities, but nothing seemed to work. Until we entered and she turned to look at us directly. Her gaze didn't last long on me or on Mukai because she didn't know us and we weren't wearing any headband that would affiliate us with the hidden villages, but Kakashi was a different story. After all, he was the grand student of her friend, not to mention how famous his father Sakuma was, and she also met him many times in the past during the Third Ninja War and knew about his tragic life, so she couldn't help but feel slightly surprised when she saw him and her drunkenness started subsiding. Kakashi felt the same way as his only visible eye widened in surprise as he said, "What are you doing here, Lady Tsunade?" Then he shot me an inquiring look that said, "Are you here to meet Lady Tsunade?" This idiot, I told you not to speak. I shot him a glare before I heard Tsunade's reply. "I'm just enjoying my life. What are you doing here, Kakashi? And who are these two that came with you?" Kakashi suddenly had hope in taking down Mukai with Tsunade's help, so he shamelessly said, "That guy over there is a traitor from the village. As for the kid, he's from the Uchiha clan. Lady Tsunade, can you help me take that guy out? He's really a huge danger to the village." Tsunade's eyes widened a little and she narrowed her eyes at Mukai, who for the first time put on a very serious face, but to everyone's surprise, he simply took a step back and hid behind the Uchiha kid as a sly smile adorned his face. My face started twitching as I turned to Mukai and said, "You have no honor to you." Mukai put on a curious look on his face as he replied, "What is this honor you speak of?" "Go-fu, never mind." I simply let out a sigh at this helpless case while Tsunade simply shook her head at Kakashi and said, "Konoha's matters do not concern me anymore. But Lady Tsunade, this guy is real." "Okay, shut up, Kakashi. Stop messing with our business," I said while looking coldly at Kakashi, which surprised Tsunade. This kid is so relaxed, was it just a coincidence that guy chose to hide behind him? But she didn't want to bother thinking too much, especially since she was still a little drunk, so she asked, "What business do you have, kid?" Kakashi tried to speak again, but I shot him a look to shut him up before I walked to Tsunade's table with a smile and said, "First of all, how can we talk without introductions? I'm Bakurio Uchiha, and this guy over here, as you can see, is my dear friend Mukai Kohinata. His family branched from the Hyuga clan a long time ago, so you can say that he's also from Konoha." Tsunade shot a look at Kakashi for confirmation and he reluctantly nodded his head. Seeing this, Tsunade looked at me and asked, "So what does a kid like you want from me?" "Oh, why the rush? How about we enjoy some drinks first?" "It will be on me," I said with a smile, but to my surprise, Tsunade had a nostalgic look as she said, "You remind me of a certain snake bastard I know," but then she smiled and said, "But I can't say no to a drink." Meanwhile, Shizune shot me a weird look which I noticed, but I decided not to read too much into it because I was focused on this beauty in front of me, but I will regret this decision very soon. "Waiter, bring some drinks to this beauty," I said as I sat down on the table in front of Tsunade while Mukai kept standing behind me like the creep he is and using me as a human shield just in case Tsunade decided to change her mind and help Kakashi. However, instead of a waiter, we were actually approached by the manager that was trying to reason with Tsunade earlier, and he said, "I apologize, sir, but we can't offer this lady any more drinks until she pays off her debts." For some reason, I started feeling my pockets screaming at me and I was about to stand up and leave, but a hand suddenly extended from in front of me and held me in place, feeling like a mountain was put over my shoulder, which contrasted with the cute look Tsunade was sending me as she did this. This bitch is actually taking advantage of a kid. I couldn't help but let out a sigh as I shot her an angry look which made her cute look turn into embarrassment before I said, "How much is this debt?" I asked this question through my gritted teeth and the manager simply dropped the bomb on me. 5 million ryo. My face turned a shade paler, prompting Shizune to think, "What a poor kid," before she shot Tsunade an angry look. But then, an idea suddenly hit me as I said, "Oh, please write it off under the name Fugaku Uchiha. We are from the same clan and he's the new Hokage of Konoha. I'm sure he will pay you soon." The manager was tempted after he knew he couldn't get his money from a random kid, and if he could gain the favor of the new Hokage, this could be even greater for him and the family behind him. "But can you really use the Hokage's name?" asked the manager, and I simply said, "Oh, don't worry, I'm even traveling with his only 2 sons, so it should be no problem, right Kakashi?" "Alright." Kakashi reluctantly nodded, and seeing the Konoha headband on his head made the manager more convinced as he brought us some drinks and Mukai shamelessly picked one. "This was really a good trick to deal with your debts. said Tsunade, who started enjoying herself and thinking I was lying. But I surprised her when I said, no, I was telling the truth. Suddenly all the drunkenness disappeared from Tsunade's face and was replaced by a dumbfounded look as asked, you mean the rumors are true and Konoha really has a new Hokage? And it's an Uchiha. Well, I guess it's only been 3 or so days since the changes happened and the news didn't spread widely yet and only unconfirmed rumors reached here. At least the manager seemed to know the truth, can't expect less from someone running a casino. I thought before I simply said, yes, Fugaku is officially the 5th Hokage of Konoha. EHHHH. Both Shizune and Tsunade yelled at the same time as she stood up from the table, causing something to jiggle violently, putting everyone in a very dangerous genjutsu. After Kakashi recounted to Tsunade and Shizune everything that happened in Konoha. Not to mention them, but even Mukai was dumbfounded at the sudden changes that occurred in the village. But what surprised them the most was when Kakashi told them about my fight with Danzo, and seeing me still alive and kicking in front of them is all the proof they needed to understand how strong I was. It seems the Uchiha are really going to rise under the leadership of Fugaku, meanwhile my Senju clan. Tsunade couldn't help but feel jealous at how low the once great Senju clan has fallen, leaving her as its only survivor to carry on its bloodline. Yet with how her luck is going, it doesn't seem she will pass on her bloodline and it may end up dying with her. The Senju princess. How ironic. Seeing the sour mood her teacher was in, Shizune tried to liven things up and looked at me curiously before she said, Bakurio-kun, did you really fight Danzo? Meanwhile, I was staring at Mukai with a huge smug smile that could even compete with Tsunade's melons in size as Kakashi told them about all of my feats while fighting Danzo, and I couldn't help but enjoy the shocked look on this show-off's face. But then I was interrupted by Shizune's question, so I turned to her and said, yes, it was a really hard fight. Then I paused and my expression turned extremely serious as I looked at Tsunade. However, Kakashi didn't tell you about everything that happened. Kakashi immediately turned to me and said, that's top secret information, you can't disclose. I quickly interrupted him, top secret my ass, I wonder how many spies there are in the village that already spread that information, plus Tsunade deserves to know about this more than anyone else, or would you rather she hears it from an outsider instead? Understanding the logic in my words, Kakashi reluctantly nodded and didn't say anything else. Meanwhile, Tsunade started having a bad feeling about what we were talking about, especially since it seemed like it concerned her one way or another, so with a serious expression on her face she asked, what's he talking about, Kakashi? Kakashi looked down sadly in silence, not knowing how to respond to her, so I answered in his place, I'm sure you know that your grandfather Hashirama was an extremely blessed ninja. Tsunade started having a bad feeling about this as she said, yes, he was. Shizune looked at Tsunade worriedly as she listened to me saying, one of his blessings is his unhuman vitality and regenerative ability. The foreboding feeling that Tsunade felt kept getting stronger and stronger when she saw me let out a sigh and Kakashi lowering his head even more in shame. Stop beating around the bush and get straight to the point. Fine, I said, before I continued with a sympathetic look. Orochimaru and Danzo invaded the privacy of your grandpa and extracted some of his cells for their sick experiments, and this is the reason Danzo was quite hard to take down, in addition to using a forbidden technique of my Uchiha clan. Tsunade's face suddenly froze for a few instances as my words kept repeating themselves in her head, but then a feeling of absolute rage overwhelmed her as she suddenly smashed the table with her fist while yelling, what did you say? Her fist penetrated the table and kept going until it smashed the ground and created a huge fissure and a small earthquake that almost destroyed the whole casino. People started screaming and running away from the casino in fear, including its own manager, as they looked at Tsunade the same way you would a monster, and thank their luck they didn't anger her, or they might have lost their lives long ago with a single punch from her. Meanwhile, Mukai directly jumped away from this angry monster while Kakashi and Shizune covered their eyes to block the shockwave her punch created. What a crazy power. This woman never stops fascinating me, I thought as I remembered what I learned from Tsunade during the war. Well, Fugaku's going to pay more than 5 million ryo. I found out that the reason she's strong isn't simply because of her body, which is indeed extremely strong thanks to her Senju bloodline and training, but the real reason why she could achieve crazy feats like destroying the rib cage of a Susanoo with her punch power alone is that she perfected the principle of turning chakra into power. There are two principles that taijutsu users follow. Either you turn your chakra into power, or you turn your chakra into speed, but of course, both of these two involve many factors. To turn chakra into power, you will have to focus your chakra into your fist without releasing it, and then you will have to change the nature of that chakra into yang chakra. And the more chakra you can accumulate and keep control of, the more power your punch will have. And this is why Tsunade, who's extremely proficient in chakra control thanks to her occupation as a medical ninja, can master this principle easily and perfect it. Meanwhile, to turn your chakra into speed, it's all about accumulating it quickly. Turn it into yang chakra before releasing it instantly. And the faster you get at accumulating chakra and releasing it from a certain point of your body, the faster you will get. This is also the principle of the body flicker jutsu, but it will always have the flaw of being predictable, as you will only go in a straight line. In addition to that, not everyone has the required reaction speed or dojutsu to allow them to use it effectively in a fight. Back to the casino, I was still sitting on my chair unfazed by Tsunade's outburst, and I watched as she retrieved her hand from the ground and walked toward me. "Kid, what did you come here for?" "Oh, she's already regaining her calm. What an amazing woman," I thought before I stood up and said, "I want you to come back with me to the village." Kakashi shot me a surprised look as he thought, "What's this kid plotting?" Tsunade shot me a mocking look as she said, "You think I will come back with you after what you told me? Unless maybe you want me to go on a rampage inside the village." "No, not really, Danzo is dead already, so if you want to go on a rampage, you can do it on the Sarutobi compound. That geezer would surely love it, but that's not why I want you back." Tsunade was surprised at how relaxed I was even after her showcase of strength and found herself curious about why this kid needed her. "What do you want then?" Before I could answer this question, I noticed from the corner of my eyes that Mukai was looking at me with puppy eyes, and I almost puked when I saw it, but I swallowed it back and replied, "There are two reasons I want you back. The first one is that asshole over there needs your help to treat his ill son. As for me." My eyes suddenly turned into 3 Tomo Sharingan to the surprise of everyone as I said, "I need to show you directly." Tsunade, understanding that I wanted to use my Sharingan's power on her to show her what I wanted, wasn't fearful at all of the possibility of me putting her in a genjutsu, because the Senju were extremely resistant to such a thing. Plus, because of their constant wars with the Uchiha in the past, they developed many special techniques to deal with the different powers of the Sharingan, so she looked me directly in the eye without any hesitation, surprising Mukai and Kakashi. And then she found herself surprised when she saw the memories I shared with her, the memories of a man she admired and his wife using my level 65 Eye of Insight. "Impossible," was all Tsunade could say. Here's Bakuryo's current status. Stat value: name Bakuryo Uchiha, level 15, health 8120 plus 94 per minute. Chakra 19424 plus 304 per minute. Stamina 3400 plus 45 per minute. Attributes: STRAGI 5 EITSTASPI 134 quadrillion 125 trillion 206 billion 251 million 340,760. Free attribute points 95 70 plus 25. Mastery: close combat fighting level 83, swordsmanship level 71, throwing art level 72, sealing art level 18, chakra control level 73, meditation level 49, fire chakra transformation level 56, wind chakra transformation level 24, water chakra transformation level 31, yin chakra transformation level 46, yang chakra transformation level 51. Skills: Kekkei Genkai, Eye of Insight level 65, Eye of Hypnotism level 67, Yomi no Kuni level 41, Jikaninki level 34, Suzano level 31, Space-Time, Summon. Quintuple Rashomon level 41, Summon. Lesser Demon level 31, Blink. Level 31, General 8, Ninjutsu, Fire 8, Wind 10, Water 9, Lightning 7, Earth 9, Yin 5, Yang 5, Taijutsu 3. Not used yet. Burning Aura level 26, Shurikenjutsu 2, Kenjutsu, Swift Sword Style. Level 33, Juinjutsu, Dark Touch. Level 7, Genjutsu, Fuinjutsu, Senjutsu. Abilities: Save and Load, Appraisal, Map, Tenketsu, Release, Blessing of the Elements, Bloodlines, Uchiha 50%. Akamichi 30%. Shadow 35%. Talents: Body Greed Master, Chakra Master, Cooking, Sealing Advanced, Hunter Medium. The increase in his spirit attribute is from his experience in the war. Quest Close Combat 4. Reach level 75 Close Combat Reward. 3000 points, Burning Aura. Burning Aura active. A type of aura that burns the user's stamina to increase their physical attributes, STR, Phi, Agi, Bit. Level 1. Grants 5% increase in attributes for 100 stamina per second. Level 2. Grants 5.5% increase in attributes for 100 stamina per second. Level 3. Grants 5.5% increase in attributes for 99 stamina per second. Level 26. Grants 11.5% increase in attributes for 88 stamina per second. Quest Ninja Killer Cage Kill 1 Cage Level Ninja. Reward. 4000 points. Summon. Lesser Skeleton. Lesser Skeleton. Allow the user to summon lesser skeletons from corpses around them. The higher the level of the corpse, the stronger the skeleton that could be summoned. Quest Ninja Killer Elite Cage Kill 1 Elite Tier Cage Level Ninja. Reward. 15,000 points. Flash active. Flash. A form of short-distance teleportation that allows the user to instantly appear in any location in a certain range around him depending on the level of the skill. 5 meters at level 1 and cost 1000 chakra and 500 stamina. Cooldown. 100 seconds. -1 hour later, a carriage housing 2 women and 3 kids were leaving the land of tea and on its way to the land of fire, and to be more specific, it was heading straight to Konoha. The driver of this carriage was Kakashi, who's not only proficient in all kinds of jutsu but also all kinds of life skills thanks to the various missions he did, because sometimes they would require a certain set of skills, especially when acting as a spy or trying to hide your identity as a ninja. And currently, Kakashi still couldn't believe that the kid he was suspecting all this time actually managed to convince this stubborn Sannin to go back to Konoha, which will bolster its forces even more by having such a great medical ninja there and a cage-level fighter as well. As for why she was with us in the carriage, Tsunade insisted that she wasn't in a rush and wanted to check out the scenery back to Konoha, but the truth was that she wanted to observe these 3 kids that, for some reason, she felt like they will become the future of Konoha. Especially, the blonde-haired Naruto, who was extremely enthusiastic and reminded her of her little brother Naoki when he was his age. Not to mention that he was the current Jinchuriki of the 9 Tails and the 4th Hokage, which she liked a lot, was probably watching her through his eyes right now, along with his wife, who she was related to through her grandma Mito, and already had a short talk with them before agreeing to go back to Konoha. As for Shisui and Itachi, they were following us on foot and having a private reunion of their own with Mukai. "Mukai-san, why did you choose to follow Bakurio?" asked Itachi curiously while leaning on a tree beside his friend Shisui. Mukai didn't answer him right away and first decided to take out a cigarette, and after lighting it up he said, "The same reason I decided to betray Konoha." Itachi remembered the details of the mission he was given by Danzo and couldn't help but frown before he said, "What about when your son is cured, what will you do at that point?" Mukai inhaled a long smoke and exhaled it before he said, "I don't know, we will see at that point. You really can't be trusted. I don't understand why Bakurio keep you beside him," said Itachi with a frown, and was about to activate his Mangekyo Sharingan and end this threat's life with Shisui's help, but he suddenly received an answer he didn't expect. Or maybe he did, but he kept hidden in his heart. "I'm the one who should be scared in this situation with that little monster, not the other way around. I'm sure you feel it too, right?" And then he simply flickered and followed after the carriage silently, leaving Shisui and Itachi deep in thought. Back at Konoha, Kakashi kept insisting on meeting the Hokage to talk about the events that happened during our journey, and the leaders of Konoha were extremely excited by the good news that Tsunade was back, especially after the death of one of their strong ninja, Danzo. However, one person in particular wasn't excited, as Tsunade wreaked havoc at his Sarutobi compound and gave his old bones a good beating to vent her anger as I waited for her in Fugaku's office. "I can't believe you actually managed to convince Lady Tsunade to come back to the village," said Fugaku with clear delight and surprise in his eyes, and it wasn't only him, as Shikaku had the same look on his face, although there was also some wariness when he stared at the man standing behind me and looking at the Hokage's office curiously, pretending like he never saw it. "Well, you put a lot of trust in me and probably suffered quite the strong backlash to the point that this idiot decided to follow us secretly," I said while pointing at Kakashi, who was standing to the side with Itachi and Shisui, before I continued. "So, this is the least I can do to repay the trust. but it's not the most I can do as I still have another surprise coming soon, and it's a big one. I couldn't help but smile at the end while thinking about their faces when they see Minato and Kushina back to life. If it's another good news such as this one, I can't wait to see it, said Fugaku with a slight smile on his face while thinking about how he was going to get back at all the people who kept criticizing and doubting him these past few days for letting the Jinchuriki leave his village alone. By the way, how did you deal with that kid? I asked, remembering Sora who was sent here before us. Oh, that was really great that you could deal with such hidden trouble laying right at our backyard. If that kid grew up and became able to wield the Nine Tails chakra sealed inside him, it would have really caused us a lot of troubles, not to mention with a dangerous mastermind with crazy ideals like Kazuma behind him. Here, Fugaku paused a little and turned to Shikaku before he said, however, we don't know how to handle him right now as he could cause danger to the people if he goes out of control. Treat him properly. I really hope that kid doesn't suffer any injustice, and don't worry, I will take care of his issues soon after I deal with some urgent matters along with Tsunade. I said with a serious face, making Itachi feel even more conflicted about what he should think of me when he saw how much I cared about a stranger. And at this point Shikaku said, can you let him live with you for a while? What's this guy plotting? I thought, but I didn't mind much and said, yes, I can. That's great. I will ask someone to escort him to your house later, said Shikaku before he left to take care of this matter. After Shikaku left and I was left alone with Kakashi, Mukai, and these Uchiha guys, I suddenly said to Fugaku, Fugaku, I have a favor to ask. Fugaku seemed surprised at first as this is the first time I was asking him a favor, but he directly said, go ahead, I will make sure to help you to the best of my abilities. I shot him a grateful look before I dropped a bomb on the room. I want the eyes of that traitor Yashira as well as one of his followers. Mukai's eyes suddenly lit up and thought in astonishment, this kid really has guts, actually asking the head of the Uchiha clan for such a thing. Is he tired of living? Bakurio, what the hell are you trying to do? Do you plan to become like that abomination Danzo? Itachi was immediately not in favor of this and directly misunderstood me, so I simply ignored him like I always do and simply waited for Fugaku, who I noticed his eyes suddenly narrowed and he was looking at me with a serious expression on his face, as this matter concerned his soft spot. The Uchiha clan. However, no matter how much he tried to look through me, he saw no greed in my eyes and I was still sitting there with the same laid-back attitude, so he said, what do you need them for? After all, he too didn't want the powers of his clan to be used the same way Danzo did. It's going to be for something that will benefit the village greatly. Fugaku lowered his head thoughtfully, but suddenly a woman's voice said, is it for that matter we talked about? And when Fugaku raised his head, he was surprised to find that it was the legendary Sannin herself, and she seems to know about this matter. Thanks to Tsunade's help and doing some more convincing of my own, Fugaku finally relented and agreed to give me Yashiro's pair of Sharingans as well as another pair that belonged to one of his followers. It's unfortunate that there was no Sharingan left in Danzo's possession, otherwise I wouldn't have to go through such troubles, and my guess was that either Orochimaru took them, or they were simply waiting for the Uchiha revolt to happen and start their harvesting festival. Either way, I finally got what I need and I could start the process of reviving Minato and Kushina. A few days later, it was early in the morning of this summer day and I almost didn't wake up because of how tired I was thanks to the surprise birthday party Makoto organized for me, and it lasted the whole night. So, I ended up oversleeping until I started hearing knocking on my door, and felt that the person was quite impatient and was about to smash it soon if I don't open it, so I immediately knew who it was. What brought you here so early in the morning? I asked Tsunade, who was accompanied by her assistant Shizune, while letting out a long yawn. Little brat, I already finished reading through the research left behind by Danzo and Orochimaru on how to integrate my grandfather's cells into a person's body to gain his abilities, but just so you know, it's almost impossible to achieve a high level of acceptance because the cells are extremely active, so there will a high level of rejection when they interact with foreign cells. After all, even Orochimaru's body wasn't good enough to handle those cells. As for Danzo, he barely managed to integrate them in his own body, but it was to such a low degree that he only got a boost in his chakra capacity and slight physical enhancement and none of the crazy regeneration. The tired look on my face vanished like an illusion as I heard her going straight to business, so I said, I don't need the function of increasing the capacity. I just want you to recover their bodies to the point where they won't immediately die once they possess them. Is this possible? Tsunade looked at me arrogantly as she said, "Of course it is. If I can't do it, no one can." And Shizune nodded in agreement, but I didn't agree to this sentiment despite knowing how great her skills were. After all, this world was hiding many mysteries. That's great to hear. When will you begin? I asked in anticipation and I received a satisfactory answer. Right now. Did you prepare whatever method you're going to use to completely heal them? I nodded at her. Yes, everything's is ready on my end, and they both learned that jutsu so they are ready. Tsunade's eyes flickered a little when I said that. Jutsu, because she understood that I was talking about the spirit transformation jutsu and it reminded her of her lover Dan. Seeing her teacher still showing such a sad look even after this many years pained Shizune, but she couldn't do anything about it, which made her feel even worse. But Tsunade was quick to regain her calm and said, "That's good to hear, let's go. I already took out their corpses." I nodded at her. "1 second, I need to wake up that little koala." Hearing this brought a smile to their faces and I quickly turned around and woke up Naruto from his deep slumber and dragged him with us despite his constant complaints. We were going to do this operation on the Senju compound where Tsunade lived, and it was kept as top secret so not even Naruto knew that I was going to help his parent recover their bodies today, and the only people who knew were Tsunade, Shizune, me, and the people involved. After reaching the Senju's compound, the first thing that came to my attention was a very huge and traditional house, probably where the previous leader of the clan used to live and where Tsunade currently lives. Once we went inside, we were met with a huge hall and its walls were decorated with many paintings of the first and second Hokages and other important members of the clan such as Mito Uzumaki, as well as the bloody history of the clan, and right in the center of this wall stood 2 aged coffins. Inside Naruto's seal space, Minato and Kushina couldn't help but stare with complicated looks at these 2 coffins that reminded them of the miracle that happened that allowed them to fully restore their souls, and in Minato's case, from the hands of the Death Reaper no less. Meanwhile, the clueless Naruto didn't even understand what a coffin is, so he asked curiously while pointing at them, "What are these?" I didn't want him to see the gruesome sight of his parents' decomposed corpses, so I simply said, "Go to sleep, Naruto," before I hit a tenketsu on his forehead causing him to immediately lose consciousness, but I caught him in my arms and put him gently on the floor. Not long after, Minato and Kushina, who learned how to use the spirit transformation jutsu during the past few days thanks to the notes I gave them and them being already in a spiritual form, suddenly left Naruto's seal space and stood in front of him. Seeing them appear, Tsunade and Shizune still felt unbelievable that this was actually happening, but they understood that they can't waste too much time because Minato and Kushina couldn't keep using the spirit transformation jutsu forever, so she simply said, "Shall we begin?" I nodded at her, and she calmly walked to the coffins and opened them one by one, and immediately, a very disgusting and foul smell assaulted my extremely strong nose and it almost made me puke, but I wanted to confirm that even though she has hemophobia, which is the fear of blood, something she developed when she was trying to save her lover Dan during the war from a fatal wound he received, but it was to no avail and blood kept gushing out and she ended up losing him and becoming scared of blood from that point onward. However, it seems like she doesn't fear corpses, which is good as we couldn't afford mistakes during this operation. And as we were watching, Shizune handed a tube to Tsunade that contained her grandfather's cells and injected some of it on Minato, starting with him while using her medical ninjutsu to stimulate those cells to get them to restore the function of the body that had a gaping hole in the middle of its stomach from Kurama, as well as replace some of his missing tissue. It took some time, but following the research we got as well as using her own medical expertise, Hashirama's cells started dividing rapidly inside Minato's body and covering the missing parts in a white layer that resembled Zetsu. Amazing, Minato's body actually has a great level of compatibility with my grandfather's cells. But how is that possible? Do you know anything about this, Minato? Tsunade couldn't hold her curiosity and ended up asking Minato directly while keeping an eye on the body. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't really know much about it. All I know is that both my parents died during the war when I was a baby, so I never got to meet them." "I see, sorry about that," apologized Tsunade before she turned her attention to Minato's body that finally stopped recovering. Hashirama's cell did their magic indeed, but damage to the organs was simply too much to recover. Not to mention that Minato's body had been decomposing slowly for 5 years, so recovering it to this state was already a miracle. Bakurio-kun, in the current state of the body, Minato can at most stay alive for 10 seconds at best, so make sure to act quickly. I nodded at her. Before I looked at Minato and said, let me get ready first. Thank you for listening guys, see you in the next part.